amount of mileage driven per person has more than tripled since 1950. We've got more cars now, you know, than registered drivers. How much farmland have we lost since the 1950s? Nobody really has an accurate count, but easily, it's fair to say, we've easily lost more than 4 million acres of farmland, an area larger than the combined size of Connecticut and Rhode Island. Happened to my car out there in the parking lot, that's 100 square feet of space. That's the car. Now, cars are very flexible transportation systems. We've got roads everywhere, hop in a car anytime, day or night, go where you want to go, but they are not very efficient at moving people. Now, here's a city street that's packed with cars, and here's how many people those cars are moving, not very many. And then, when we get to our destination, of course, we've got to store the car. Well, I'm getting ahead of myself here. Let me tell you just how inefficient cars are. If we're talking about a residential alley in the city of Harrisburg, or we're talking about a lane of the Pennsylvania Turnpike, it's the same thing. The maximum number of cars you can move at any speed, the maximum number of cars you can move past a certain point in an hour is 2,000. And that's perfect weather conditions, and everybody's a good driver and so forth. So that usually translates to 2,000 people. Now, if they're on a bus, you can move 9,000 people. If they're on a bicycle, you can move 14,000 people. If they're walking, you can move 19,000 people in an hour. So every other form of transportation basically is more efficient in moving people than cars. And here's space. We have 5 or 6 parking spaces for every car registered in America. I mean, we have to have one here, right, at the office. Then we've got to have one at the mall. We've got to have one at home. We have to have one at the church. We have to have one at the DCNR's system of parks and so forth. Even though the car is only one place, we've got 5 or 6 other empty parking spaces for the time when I'm actually going to go somewhere else. Now, Pennsylvania tend to think, oh, we've got lots of land in Pennsylvania. You know, I'm sure you do know. You're in the business you're in, you know this. The good farmland, of course, is in southeastern Pennsylvania. So, southeastern Pennsylvania, if I'm going to define it from York County going all the way over to the Delaware River, Philadelphia, including the Lehigh Valley, that's 15% of our land area. It's most all of our good farmland, and it's half our population. If southeastern Pennsylvania was a country, we would be one of the most densely populated countries in the world. Southeastern Pennsylvania is more densely populated than Germany. We are more densely populated than Japan. We are nearly as densely populated as England. And so, now, Wyomissing was built on what we would call a walking scale. This is the simple principle. The average person can walk 300 feet a minute. Next time you go to a football game, get there early, start at one end zone, time yourself, walking to the other end zone, not power walking, just walking, and you'll find you can do it in a minute, 60 seconds, just average walking speed. So if you divide 300 feet into a mile, you find the average person can walk a mile in 17 to 20 minutes. Say 20 minutes because you've got traffic lights and you're not going in direct lines and so forth. Now in a big city like Philadelphia, that's a huge area. We whip out my pointer here. There's Center City, Philadelphia. That's the convention center. There's City Hall. You walk 20 minutes in any direction in Philadelphia, you'd be walking past more retail than any mall in America. You'd be walking past hundreds of thousands of square feet of office space. You'd be walking past factories, schools, churches, everything within Pennsylvania. Oops. Even a little Wyomissing, Pennsylvania. That green diamond was our row house here. This was the Berkshire Factory Complex. This was the main street. Even as a kindergartner, I could walk up to Penn Avenue for my penny candy. I could walk to the Wyomissing Public Library. Couldn't read, but I could look at the picture books. I could walk to elementary school all by myself. My father here, he died at a very young age, and my family, in reduced financial circumstances, moved to the nearby city of Reading. At that time, a city of better 100,000 people, and I could walking scale. And up to the 1950s, that's how most of us lived. We lived in villages, we lived in towns, we lived in cities. You had people of all ages and incomes living together in the same place which gave you that sense of community that you only can enjoy when people are living in the same neighborhoods. Now, cities and towns are the only permanent way to save farmland. Here's an example. Here's Berks County, as I'm sure you know, our third leading agricultural county. There's the city of Reading. Reading's 10 square miles. That's a little bit more than 1% of the total land area of Berks County. Yet in 1950, nearly half the residents of Berks County were living on that 1% in the city of Reading. And they also have that feeling of neighborhood you can only enjoy when people are living within walking distance of each other and things they need to do. Real communities, well, the first thing we need is growth boundaries. We have 2 counties in Pennsylvania that are doing that, Lancaster and York, which started a long time ago in the 1980s, started the concept. The idea is very simple. You draw a line and you say inside the line that's where the development's going, and outside the line that's agriculture and forestry. And if you're not in agriculture and forestry, you don't belong outside the line, you need to be inside the line. The next step is something called the official map. The first official map in Pennsylvania was done on behalf of William Penn in 1682. This is an official map of Philadelphia, done on behalf of Penn. Here's the Delaware. And zoning. Zoning in this country does exactly the wrong thing. Zoning separates uses. You separate uses, it means everybody's in their car all the time. Zoning needs to bring things together and put things within walking distance of each other, and it needs to be concerned with appearances. I don't care if I'm living across from an office. What does the building look like? If it looks attractive, great. And so zoning should have design standards, and it should also require every street, every highway, everything should have trees that are going to get big. 75 historic buildings, which we've got a lot of in Pennsylvania. We need to redo our, and we have redone our building codes to make it easier to fix up older buildings. So we don't tear them down, so that we fix them up. And then the big bike rack in front of Davis High School instead of a big student parking lot. Kids date on bicycles, and it's fashionable, it can be cool to date. These are kids at UC Davis riding around everywhere they need to go. And the town just has a much nicer atmosphere because there's not so many cars driving around. Everybody's on their bikes or their walk. Now, Davis has a perfect climate. Here's a place that does not have a perfect climate. Madison, Wisconsin. Gets extremely cold, but it's one of the biggest bike capitals in the United States. People riding. It's hopelessly outdated. Right now we have a national debt of around, well, we're going to have a national debt of about $9.3 trillion in not long. Soon, our national debt is going to be close to the range of right after the Second World War. We can't afford it. And then we have Social Security, Medicare, Medicaid coming up, people retiring, and we just don't have the money for sprawl. Then all this driving, even in the economic crisis, oil prices are starting to come up again. And the reason is simple, because everyone in the world is adopting the American drive everywhere for everything lifestyle. It's one thing when you have Americans driving everywhere for everything. It's another thing when you have 300 million Americans, that's one thing. You have 1.3 billion Chinese doing it, that's another. 1.1 billion Indians. You know, the #2 car market in the world today is China. They're creeping in the mid-1990s. You see how close the houses are to each other? It makes it possible to walk everywhere. Big houses, little houses, all in the same block, apartment buildings, sidewalks, street trees. Big attraction, a little downtown. You can walk everywhere downtown. That's the corner grocery store there instead of the Turkey Hill or the Wawa with a parking lot in front. This has a parking lot in the back, but basically you walk there. And a big attraction was a public school that all the kids could walk to. This started out as a K-12 public school. It's now K-8. They built a high school behind this building. The idea was you could walk. Now, what do they call these new traditional communities? They call them heart-healthy communities, because the traditional Pennsylvania town allows you to walk, and that's good for your heart to get out and exercise every day. You want to solve a lot of problems at once, build those walking communities. And if I could wish anything for our children, it would be for them to live in a walkable community like my town of Pottstown, of which I'm very fond. This is my